Welcome to the Retail Media Moguls podcast, brought to you by Platform 195. We share trends and strategies across retail media to help you accelerate your brand growth. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson. Welcome to the Retail Media Moguls podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Adamson, founder and CEO of Platform 195. We've just had a little hiatus over the summer, so we're back with a new season. And today we have the pleasure of welcoming Justin Sandy, Director of Commercial Development at Bol.com. Justin brings over 15 years of extensive experience in the media and retail sectors, having shaped and expanded Bol.com's retail media department into a powerhouse of innovation and growth. His journey from digital strategy to leading cutting-edge retail media initiatives underscores his profound expertise in transforming media strategies into tangible business success. Justin's career is a testament to his ability to navigate and drive change in the dynamic world of retail media. And from his strategic leadership at Bol.com to his influential role in the IAB task force for e-commerce, he has consistently demonstrated an exceptional knack for leveraging media to enhance commercial performance. So today, we're excited to dive into his insights and experiences, exploring how he's navigated the complexities of retail marketing and what emerging trends he's keeping an eye on. Welcome to the show, Justin.
Thank you very much, Stuart. It's a privilege to join. And thanks for the great introduction.
Well, it's really great to have you here. We've just touched on your career there. It's always a great thing to do is just to hear a little bit about our guests. So why don't you give us a bit of an insight into your background and how you've gone through your career and into Bol?
Yeah, well, it has been a career for over 20 years right now in digital media, I have to say. So I started out at an ad network in the Netherlands, one of the first ad networks working for various publishers, broadcasters, everyone struggling with, how to cope with internet back then, I have to say, and how to make money out of that. But it really kickstarted my career a bit. So working together, closely together with publishers, with broadcasters, but also with media companies, with advertisers directly, and following that path to consultancy a little bit, and eventually ending up in retail media. And that's 7 years ago. So I make a big leap there. But basically, I think from study onwards, I studied communication science back then. At that time, I was interested in persuasive communication. So I was always interested in media and also advertising related to that. So ended up 7 years ago at Bol. And there, I think, back then it was only a sort of a project. It was a project called Retail Media. And the interesting thing there was I finally thought, we're expecting to reach people and we think we can make the difference with our advertising campaigns. No, I'm now sure because I know who are those people I'm targeting. What do they actually do after clicks, for example? So I really thought, it's the starting point, knowing what people buy, but also, let's say, an evaluation point. Did it work or not? So lucky to start it there.
Brilliant. And then you've gone up through there. What are you doing now there?
So obviously, the past 7 years, it grew rapidly because I think Bol as a platform, Bol.com, also changed rapidly from being a store, an e-commerce store, to become a more marketplace, an open marketplace for sellers. That really gave us the opportunity to think of business models like advertising and grow there. And since the past years, we're now actually thinking, do we need to transition ourselves into publishing, basically, acting as a publisher? And, not only being very strong at the bottom funnel, at the conversion, at the sale, but also, we have, for the Netherlands, in that perspective, it's big. So Netherlands and Belgium, we have 13 million customers monthly. They're also orientating on the platform. They don't know exactly what to buy, so we can influence also more upper funnel and help advertisers with that. And that's what we're doing now. This is the phase we're in right now. So delivering next to, let's say, very good search solutions, we're also developing more display, social solutions in order to make the consumer journey more rich.
So over that sort of 7 years, have you seen anything kind of pivotal that's sort of really helped accelerate Bol or that's made you shift into anything else?
So I think there was a major shift within Bol. I think the biggest shift was that it became an open marketplace. But more from a retailer perspective, I think Corona also did a lot for, let's say, retail media and that business in that sense. And obviously, Traditional retail, traditional e-commerce, well, it's low margin business. It's very hard work. You need to be as scalable as possible to really earn money. So it made sense that when you have a lot of customers, a lot of traffic on your site, it really made sense to think of becoming more or less a media entity as well. And I think that changed in the past year.
And how much is Amazon's sort of boom in doing this sort of and being a marketplace and its boom in advertising? I think the last stat I saw was something like $12 billion it's now doing. Has that shaped what you're doing at all?
Definitely, Bol exists since 1999. So basically, we started off in the Netherlands at the same time as Amazon did in the US. So we're always look at the big competition, of course, and see what they're doing. But of course, we started off a little bit later, but we have the same development from, hey, we have a lot of traffic. Hey, brands and partners are willing to buy specific places to be more present. They want to improve their business, in this case, Amazon or Bol. So we had the same, let's say, journey a little bit. But 7 years ago, Amazon wasn't present in the Netherlands yet. So I had the, let's say, impression that we could really make steps forward back then. But eventually, of course, the scale of Amazon is huge. So if they implement something, roll out something in the Netherlands, it's instant. But then again, we had some headwinds, of course, in the first years. And Bol is a strong brand in the Netherlands and Belgium. It's a love brand, basically. And I think that really helped us also in growing our business without bothering too much of competition.
Good stuff. So you touched on the media solutions that you're offering there a minute ago. If I was an advertiser and I was coming to you, give me an overview of what you're actually selling to advertisers.
It varies. So I think the biggest chunk, the best part of our advertising solution is search. It's search related. So because we're a marketplace, 50,000 of partners selling their products, 13 million people looking at it. So we bring, let's say, a demand and supply together. So search is our main driver. I think roughly 80% of our revenues, ad revenues, is derived from that. And the product called behind is sponsor products. So if you're looking for a laptop, you type in laptop and you will get to see the result pages. And the first two, for example, places are sponsored. So brands willing to advertise on that specific place. So a little bit like Google, but then on Bol. And apart from that, we have a very broad spectrum of display as well. And display, if you look at Bol, it's really integrated in the look and feel of Bol. It's integrated in the customer journey. We always show, let's say, display connected to shopper data. We always say we have the highway solution. It's sponsored products. So you get to see the thing you exactly want. You click on it and you buy it. But we also have a scenic route, more or less. So people who are orientating, we do know from our data that they went to specific areas on the website before. They tend to look at laptops the past months, but perhaps we should give them the ability to learn a little bit more about the offering. So we give advertisers or brands the opportunity to tell a little bit more about their products within display or in content integration like brand stores or something like that, or connected to social, our social offering. So within Instagram or Facebook or something like that. So those are basically the biggest two parts, display and search. And the data connected to it is, I think, the essential part, because that makes it really relevant for customers to engage with it.
And how are you powering your sponsored products solution? Is that a third-party tech or are you using proprietary tech for that?
That's actually a great question. I think the past year, of course, starting off as a project meant that we're obviously not there yet to buy or build ourselves, basically. We had to prove it was interesting, it was worth investing in. So we partnered together with, back then was HookLogic, but the funny thing is Criteo always bought the companies we will start working with. So it's Criteo we worked with until past month, actually, because we had several years of working together with Mabaya. Well, it's also tech, but also bought by Criteo later on. But now, since it's that big part of our, let's say, our business, we decided to build it our own. So the past years, we invested a lot in tech. So we have quite an extensive team of tech people, and we now launched our own sponsored products tooling.
Yeah, it's quite an exciting shift that actually. So we had a podcast with Volt Ads who had done the same thing. They started with a third party, I think, and now running all proprietary sponsored products. It's an interesting shift that's happening.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's because, of course, the size, the scale, but also the ability to really work with our own algorithms, our own data connected to it, because we need to be in control of that completely in order to keep the Bolt platform also interesting for a shopper, basically. And that's the reason why we did that. From the other hand, if we look at display, for example, we're not there yet, of course. So we're in another stage there. So we also partner with tech companies.
Really interesting. So you'd also mentioned social there. Are you packaging that up with the display and giving it as audience extension, or is it separated out? How's it being sold?
Yeah, so we're still developing and doing tests on how to bring this to the market. But I think the most simplistic way is, okay, we have quite a lot of followers within our own social environment. So Bol, as a big retailer, we have quite a big social presence, and we connect. We always work with brands within our own, let's say, our own subscription base, basically. But what we offer is, let's say, the basic Instagram and Facebook offering within that. But it's always connected to both, of course, the way the social channel wants to show it, but it's also connected to our data. So we only serve it to, well, specific target groups, for example, or specific in-market audiences.
Yes, very clear. And actually, it's interesting to see you go on that journey. Ultimately, when you've got a huge amount of traffic on site, and a site like yours, it tends to be very on site. So it's exciting to see you're starting to actually add those opportunities in, especially as retail media evolves and brands are more accepting of buying this stuff from a retailer. It's good to see that happening.
Absolutely. And it is, of course, also sort of a display product. And we're now there basically in the phase. I'm not sure if it's too much of the business language or lingo I'm using, but it's working with data clean rooms there. So really try to be able to connect our data, or let's say layer our data over the data, for example, advertisers, and activate it on publishing platforms.
Yeah, very exciting. So tell us about the client base then, because very often what we see Platform 105 when we're working with our retail partners is just around this. You have this sort of core of big partners who are sort of the 80% of revenue, but 20% of the volume. And then this real long tail of smaller partners, which might be in the sort of hundreds or thousands. How does that client base structure in your world?
I think you're right. So basically, we have two main types of clients. We have the bigger, let's say, the top 200 advertisers, and they do a lot of stuff. They test a lot with us. They're really, well, media and marketing savvy. So they really know where to steer on, also how to push us a little bit more into product development. But on the other hand, we have, let's say, the long tail. And at us, we have roughly monthly 10,000 active advertisers within our platform. So that's the other group of customers. And that could range from, let's say, companies who do a couple of, well, let's say 100,000 euro revenues up to 10 million euros revenues or even more. But yeah, we need to serve them as well. And I think the way we try to work with that is really also put the customer first, hear what they want to know, what their needs are. But obviously, if we talk about long tail, we need to do that as scalable as possible with webinars, with, let's say, automatic features within tooling. But the other group, the top 200, it's more or less one-on-one communication as well.
Yes. And that 10,000, they're all self-serving via the platform in the back end.
So honestly, we're still need to develop a lot of self-service tooling. But yeah, if you look at, for example, Sponsor Products is fully self-serviced. So they have their own login, their own environment, and they can start playing around with campaigns themselves. And eventually we have the vision, of course, to bring it all together, the whole offering together behind one login, for example. Also agencies being able to work for our clients, and let's say having things like closed loop measurement in place. So, okay, why should we invest in display next to search, for example? What does that mean? And are we able to show it? But it's now layered, but we want to bring it together.
Yeah, amazing. You touched on measurement there. I know it's a beast of a topic and it rears its head in this podcast very often, but tell us how you're doing measurement and how you're talking to partners about success.
So sometimes I was talking about, okay, some people ask me, okay, what made the big difference the past years to become successful in this? And I think key was that we introduced, let's say, just reporting, good dashboarding for advertisers, for partners who invested in advertising at Bol. And I think that really made the change, because before we acted as retailer, as an e-commerce, a real retailer. We wanted to have all the data ourselves. We weren't that transparent. And I think there was a big shift. If you want to be successful in media and marketing, you need to be transparent as well. You need to show what the effects of your campaigns or investments are. And I think that really made the difference in our business. And I think from a data perspective, it's not only about media effects or media campaign insights, but it's also about consumer effects connected to it. And I think there's the real USP of retail media channels, that you really can connect, let's say, shopper insights to media insights. And we're now, that goes in little steps, I have to be honest. And for example, we're now at the level that we really connect, of course, we connect sales data, but we also connect data, for example, like, are you new to brand? So did you see this brand before, or did you buy it before? We also can tell advertisers, how does your brand perform versus competition? What do people actually look for? Is it the pink brace? Is it the pink bracelet or the black one which you're advertising on? So all those insights, we bring it together. And I think the biggest challenge is to really work on that language, to make the language marketing in this case.
Yeah. And are you doing all that manually in the background when you're comparing sort of a pink bracelet? You're having to actually, you've got a team of people deep diving into it, or is it being surfaced somewhere that's easy to access?
Absolutely. All these ideas and things, they started manually, basically. But now we invested the past 2 years, and also the upcoming years, we will invest heavily in data analytics capacity. And then we're not only talking about business analytics, but also media analytics. So really deep diving into the data we already have derived from campaigns, but also deep diving into what we see on consumer behavior on Bol, and connect those two. And what that team does, what that team brings us, is also scalable ways to present these kind of insights. We call it compelling stories in this case. So we have some of those insights, and we can use one of them or several of them to improve business together with the brand.
Very good. So tell me about creative solutions. I saw that I had a quick sort of look around bowl.com, and I was like clicking on some of your partners on there. And there are some creative things happening. Tell us a bit about those.
So in our journey, we're definitely working towards giving the brand the opportunity, literally and figuratively, of course, to tell their story, their brand story. Because we do know that a lot of customers, they're also attracted to specific brands, and they want to see and learn more about them. So what we're now developing, and it's really in development right now, we're now trying to see, hey, can we attract customers by showing their favorite brand? And if you click on it, for example, you will get to see, let's say, a store environment of that specific brand, giving all the features and opportunities for a brand to bring what they want to bring in video, in content, etc. So these are the newest ways of advertising, basically, on our platform, newest ways for brands to show them. And I think it's a little bit, well, playing that publisher a little bit more, in essence, looking at how they do this, and can we translate it in an e-commerce environment? And this is something we're now developing a lot. And I think also have to stretch out here that it's always connected. We're not showing it to everyone. But we do want to be as relevant again for a specific customer. We do know he or she is interested in a specific brand or is in a certain stage of the funnel, and then they get to see this specific feature or environment.
Yeah, it's a smart way to do it. So give us a brand that's doing it well. Have you got an example of a brand that has used the bowl offering well?
Of course, there are several of them, but I think the way we work with all the brands, all the specific brands or partners, they all have their own goals. So it's very hard to say, okay, this was a success. I think that the way we work is, we think we should be as transparent as possible on various goals and KPIs, basically. So everyone is able to discuss with us, okay, when is it a success and when it's not a success. But obviously, if you look at our bigger advertisers, those who are willing to invest in trial and error, basically, and have, let's say, a longer term vision on building their brand on Bol, those brands, they're really successful because they started off. Of course, they always work with sponsored products, with search, because it makes sense. If people are looking or really close to the sale, you need to be there. But based on proof points that that works, they get confident and invest a little bit more also in, hey, we need to attract more potential customers, for example, to our shop or web page. And then they start investing in display and display targeting ways, and also counts for social. But what needs to be in place is the right data and showing, let's say, giving back the essential KPIs and how they progress during time, over time. And then those advertisers who do this with us in a very partnership manner, they grow a lot. Absolutely.
Great. So obviously we can see the growth of Bol.com and the retail media side, and actually we see it industry wide, but we all know that there are challenges in there. Tell us sort of what are the tough bits of this job? What are the harder bits, either broader in retail media or we have to fight day to day? And I know them well.
Yeah, there are a lot of tough nuts to crack. So it comes back to, first of all, still the language, basically. And what I mean with that is we're still an e-commerce player. We're still a marketplace. Or when we are discussing retailers, you're still a retailer to advertisers. So they expect sales, they expect conversion, they expect that we can give back all the data they need around their customer, for example. And that makes sense from a marketing perspective, but there is still a lot of work to do there to convince that we're also able to work with our reach, to work with the data for product development perspective, for example. And I think that's something we're struggling with. I think all the retailers are struggling with that. They would like to tap into, for example, TV budgets or something like that. But therefore, we definitely need to prove in another way than conversion that we're effective for advertisers. And this is something which is a challenge. And apart from that, the challenge in data itself is always there as well. I think it depends on what phase you're in as a company. But I think if you look under the hood of every retailer, you would get to see all various kinds of, well, let's say, systems and places where data is sitting, but you need to bring it together. You need to be able to work with it and then activate it, actually. And I think that takes some time.
Yeah, it will. And as the technology evolves, and it's evolving quickly, it should get easier, but you're right, that's tough. So tell me about, your CV mentions that you worked at the IAB task force for e-commerce. Tell us a bit about that and your work there.
It was formerly was at the e-commerce task force. It's now changed into retail media task force, obviously. But yeah, back then, a couple of years ago, there was no such thing as a task force or a group of people talking together about retail media. And that was, let's say, during Corona still. So it was booming. So there was a lot of interest back then. And I think also a need of having the right discussions about what is it? What's the definition of retail media? What do we think about measurements, for example? What do we think of connecting into the digital advertising ecosystem? So those bigger topics were raised back then. So I suggested the IAB, hey, we need a specific task force for that as well. It's a new channel, or perhaps in the end it will be emerged into display or video and social again. But today, it's quite new. It's a new environment with new players, also new tech partners, and we should bring that knowledge together to basically also inform the market a little bit better.
Love that. So we've only got a few minutes left. Why don't you've obviously got many years experience doing this now. For professionals sort of starting their careers in retail media, what sort of 3 pieces of advice might you offer them in terms of developing their career in this area?
If I look back at my own career in the past years, I would say I'm always curious. So be curious, because things in media, retail media, or marketing changes rapidly and they change constantly. So there's a lot of things happening there. So I think after 1 or 2 or 5 years of working in media, you're still not there yet. You need to nurture yourself constantly in this space. So be curious is the best thing to bring with you. Also, data savviness is key, of course. So that the second thing I would suggest is, be data driven. Try to think of data as a fun thing because you get a lot of fun facts out of data. And it's always helps you in strategizing or convincing others that you're in the right path. And finally, I would say if I look at the way I look at advertising and marketing, don't take it too seriously, I would say. Eventually, it's about human behavior first. So I would say data, tools, it brings you a lot, but you also have to look outside what's happening, what is really going on in the world. What do you think of some developments yourself? So people like to be surprised, they like to be inspired, they want to laugh and use those kind of, let's say, social psychological dynamics also to improve your work.
Definitely. I think that's 3 great bits of advice there for any up and coming young stars. So look, I think last question then, I think just because we really are out of time, over the next sort of 3 to 5 years, where do you see retail media evolving?
It's always hard to predict these kind of things, but because it's an evolution, and I compare it a little bit with programmatic and all the things happening in the past years in the advertising industry. But I think social commerce will definitely a big one to follow and to look at what's happening there. Also from, let's say, the global players, consolidation of technology, but also I think smaller retailers working together more closely and networks or something like that. Because obviously the bigger players, well, they're able to do it themselves. But there are a lot of smaller retailers who are still struggling how to deal with these topics and how to deal with the investments connected to it. And eventually, of course, it's becoming media. So retailers, to my opinion, will act more and more as publisher in the upcoming years to be able to compete with the actual marketing investments connected to it. So I think it's around that.
Great. Look, Justin, unfortunately, we are out of time, but thank you for gracing our Retail Media Moguls podcast with all that amazing insight into Bol and into you and into the strategies that you've done. Look, we'd be thrilled to have you back again. Come and talk to us in about 6, 8 months, years' time and see how that's all evolved. I mean, it's amazing that journey you're going on with the technology there and the self-serve and the 10,000 suppliers and the long tail. So much to be done and so much exciting stuff going on. So we'd love you to come back and see us again.
Well, happy to step in again, of course, Stuart.
Great. Thanks, Justin. The Retail Media Moguls podcast is brought to you by Platform 195. To learn more about Platform 195 and how to connect retail media with intelligent marketing to accelerate growth, visit platform195.com. And then make sure to search for Retail Media Moguls in Apple Podcasts, Spotify and Google Podcasts, or anywhere else podcasts are found. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. And on behalf of the team here at Platform 195, thanks for listening.